Hi guys, welcome back to our channel. My name is Sergey and I'm the owner of Sergey Green Studio. We provide photography and videography services here in Los Angeles. And in today's video, we're going to be talking about the second shooting. In the previous videos, I mentioned multiple times that this is one of the best places to start, but I haven't talked about it in depth. So let's just go through everything in that video. We're going to be talking about the roles of the second shooter. We're going to be talking how to find these gigs, how to be prepared for all of that. And also I'm going to show you a few of my tricks and insight that I gained through the years. So let's get started. So first of all, let's look from the perspective of the first photographer, why he's hiring the second shooter. Why does he need the second shooter? And you'll quickly see from that what is the roles and how to stick with that position for a little bit. And by the way, I'm talking about the second shooting in this video from the perspective of the person who has the ambition to become the first photographer. But if you want to do the second shooting for a while, for a couple of years, and some people actually very happy to be in that position and they want to stay there, this video might be helpful for you as well. So when someone is hiring you as the second shooter, what they want from you, they want your perspective to the wedding. So they want a different angle. They also want to make sure that you're going to capture things that they physically cannot do because they are in a different place. And also you're going to capture things from the different angle, even if when you are in the same place. And the other thing that you're going to get them as much value as possible, because they're going to choose you one gig after another when you bring in the value to them. So what is the role of the second photographer? This is incredible. This is incredibly important and crucial to understand to become a good one. And without becoming a good second shooter, it's probably going to be impossible to become the good first shooter. So let's just go through the timeline. When you just start in the wedding, and usually wedding starts from the getting ready shots, you are going to do the first photographer going to do the getting ready shots of the bride, the details, the bridal party, all of that. Second shooter doing the same for the groom and the groomsman party. So there's going to be the same thing. Groom putting his jacket on, dressing, the best man helping him with all of that. All of the details, fun shots with the guys, everything. So you want to know what you're going to do. You want to have a plan. And the best way to do that is to look at the other photographers' work and to see what is possible to do out there. Because when your first photographer who hired you going to look through the photos, he's either going to be happy with the variety of shots that you took or unhappy. And as a result, he either going to hire you again or not. Same logic goes throughout the day. Right after we got ready, we're probably going to do the first look. So the first photographer going to take care of the bride's reaction, and you as a second photographer, you of course taking care of the groom's reaction. So your camera is always pointing at the groom. Same goes for the photos of the wedding party, of the bridal party. If we are tight on time, I might ask my second shooter to take photos of all of the guys, all of them together, separate shots, couple of fun shots, and you want to have few scenarios as well. Same, you can Google it, you can take a look at the other photographers' work and figure out what you want to do. There is a certain scenarios. You can come up with scenarios of your own as well. Same go further to the ceremony. Very simple example at the very beginning when the bride walking down the aisle, first photographer, of course, pointing his camera at the bride, focusing on the bride, and you as the second shooter ideally want to get her trail from the back. And after you got that shot, you want to move a little bit further and get a reaction of the groom. If you feel like you cannot get both, just stand in the position where you can see the groom and where you can get the reaction of the groom. First photographer would not get this shot, but it's incredibly good to have both of them in the album in the future. Same goes for the rest of the wedding as well. Also, as I mentioned, the second photographer need to be in the places where first photographer cannot be, simply because he cannot be in the two places at the same time. For example, throughout the family photos, second shooter going to do the cocktail hour, going to capture cocktail hour. Usually these things happening at the same time. Same for the toast and the reception in general. When the first photographer pointing his camera at the bride and the groom, or for someone who's given the toast, second shooter can capture the reaction of the guest. Don't take photos. Don't take the same photos as the first photographer is doing. It doesn't really make any sense. Same for the group shots. When I've seen that a lot, unfortunately. When first photographer taking picture of the family, second shooter might do the same, but from the different angle. This photo is not valuable and they not really needed. But at the same time, you can go and do the cocktail hour. This is much more valuable in this case. I, for example, ask my second shooters to take portraits of all of the guests who are at the wedding, whether they're going to do this during the cocktail hour or at the reception itself. But I want to make sure that in my gallery, we have the portraits, nice portraits of each and every guest who attended the wedding. So now when we talked about the roles and tasks for the second photographer, let's talk about the things that would help you to complete them. Well, I would separate it into two things. First of all, it's the technical skills and your ability to shoot. You want to make sure you prepare from every possible angle over here, that you have a nice full frame camera, that you have nice lenses, maybe not like 10 of them or anything like that, but 2, 3 nice lenses. And that you have nice, reliable flash that's not going to overheat or anything, and better multiple flashes, that you prepare for all type of scenarios. And I would assume you did multiple sessions of your friends somewhere at the beach or at the park, and you already did a couple of engagement photo shoots for the couple that I mentioned in the previous video, that you did all of that. And now on the wedding, you actually prepared for what I just mentioned. Second very important thing is your communication skills. And I cannot stress enough how important it is and how rare it is, actually. Communication needs to be done right, both between the second photographer and the first photographer, and between the second photographer and the bride and the groom, or the guests if needed. What do I mean by that? Well, first of all, you want to make sure you're responding quick, you're communicating quick if you really need that gig. Second thing, you also want to make sure that you're not overly communicating. And what do I mean by that? And I don't want to sound bad or anything, but some photographers would really over communicate with the first photographer, not really realizing that it's the wedding with 6 professionals there, and the first photographer doesn't necessarily need to answer all of the questions that everybody has in their team. Ideally, he wants each and every member to know what they're doing and follow all of the timelines. What do I mean by that? Let's say you're meeting at the lobby, right? And some people would start calling and ask where to park and where to start and what is the address and what are we going to do now and everything. You don't have to do that. You can figure out the parking on your own. Because imagine everybody would start calling the first shooter or the lead person in the team and ask about this type of things. You're a grown-up person, you can figure out the parking. Same for things that's gonna go. Open up the timeline and you will see everything. Most of the questions answered in the timeline itself. If you have an additional questions, it's better to ask them prior to the wedding, like a day or two before the wedding. You can just call to the person who hired you and say like, hey, I don't want to be annoying or anything, but I also want to make sure that we are on the same page. And let's take it 15, 20 minutes to go through everything. I want to make sure that we are on the same page. Really, that's going to be much more professional than asking all of this bunch of questions on the wedding itself. And same goes further. Like if you're a vegetarian, for example, don't ask your first photographer or who hired you about all of this stuff. You can easily figure out it yourself. Go to the catering and ask that simply. So this is all communication skills. You want to make sure that everybody is happy with what is going on. I'm not talking about the conflict situation that some people create. Unfortunately, it happened a few times, but as a result, that was the first and the last time when I worked with that person. And at the same time, I have the second shooters who eventually became the lead photographers in my team, who would be great with that skills. And equipment and everything would come later, but the most important part is that they have a great communication skills. And they would stay with us for a year as the second photographer, and they would eventually become the first lead photographer, and eventually they would leave to start their own business. And that's what I want to talk next about. But actually, before I mention that, first of all, let's talk how to become a second photographer. You might think that it's pretty simple. You can just text someone or email someone who is asking for that type of things. And you would be right. But at the same time, you would be surprised how many times I would post something on a Facebook or in a group that I need this second shooter in that on that date on that place, and people would reply me like, "Hey, I'm available." And some of you watching this video would be like, "Yeah, what is wrong with that?" I would have to say everything, because just put yourself on that position. You did the post, right? You send the message out there, and you receiving a bunch of messages back like that. And one of that persons would send you a very detailed email saying like, hey, my name's so-and-so. Here is my gallery with the weddings. Here's the entire wedding that I shoot. Here's where I worked at. Here is my equipment list. That's my camera. That's my backup camera. That's my lenses and flashes. And I'm available on that date. Maybe they will attach some sort of review and this kind of things. Guess what is the chances of person who said, hey, I'm available to get the gig? Almost none compared to the person who sent it a very detailed reply. At the same time, you don't want to overshoot it. For example, you don't want to send like a 3 pages PDF or some sort of things. Not really. Everything should be in the side of the message or inside of the email. Attachments, not really necessarily. Also, you don't have to send the resume like, oh, I finished this school in college or whatever. It's not really relevant. What is relevant is your work, if you have it. If you don't have specifically wedding photos, you can just say that I don't really have it, but here's the gallery with lots of my friends and other couples that I shoot. And very likely you're going to get this gig if this photos captured right. Yes, you're going to need a little bit more explanation as what is going on and when what you would need to capture, but still you're going to get the gig eventually. So how do you find these gigs? Where are you going to go and where is this posts are. So as I mentioned, Facebook probably one of the best places. There's a bunch of groups where people looking for the second shooters, and you want to make sure that you have the notifications, that you're replying on them very, very quickly. Because, for example, if someone posted 2 hours ago, and you would reply 2 hours after, the chances you're going to get this gig almost none. You want to reply in the first 10 minutes. Some of you would say like, oh, this is crazy or something like that. It's just the reality of the business. Actually, same goes to booking the bride and the groom. When they message to a couple of photographers, when they're ready to hire the photographer, you much likely to be hired if you reply to their emails within 30, 40 minutes. If you haven't replied in a day, yeah, good luck. So it's just the business is just the way it works. The other thing that also works beautifully, and for some reason not many people use that, is just to send cold emails out there to the photographers, to the established photographers out there, saying something like, hey, I know you're not looking specifically someone for the wedding, but just in the future, here is my gallery, here is my rate. That is very important. Include your rate. You can easily figure out what is the rate for the second shooter position in your area and for your specific level of skills. And also keep in mind that your goal right now is not to make as much money as possible. Your goal is to get the gig and keep going with the portfolio. So here's my gallery and here's all my information, and follow up a couple of days later. I guarantee you would find a gig very, very quickly just using this very simple practice. And now when we talked about all of that, let's talk about how to transfer from the second shooter to the first one. And actually, this is just gonna happen organically. First of all, because you're shooting the second, because you're working as the second photographer, you would eventually build a portfolio. And this is actually a very important point to ask the person you hire, who's hiring you, if you can use your photos for your portfolio. If they say no, figure out yourself whether you want to work for them or not. And that's the right of the first photographer, of course. And if it's crucial for you, then just simply don't accept this job, look for something else. You always can find someone who will allow you to use these photos. So eventually you're just gonna build your portfolio. You're gonna put your word out there. And with building portfolio, you're gonna start booking your clients, maybe not on the same level as you working as the second photographer. You will book more affordable weddings, but most importantly, they are yours. So you're just naturally gonna go through that. Question you might ask, how many times you need to second shoot the wedding? And the answer for everyone is different, and it's not like there's a clear line between these roles. There is going to be a transition point where you're going to be second shooting and doing your own weddings as well. But I would have to say that in this specific case, it's all about the quantity. You want to make sure that you're doing 40, 45 weddings as the second shooter per year. The more you have, then better. And that way you will be able to save time too. Very simple math. If you're doing, let's say, 20 weddings a year, then it's going to take you 2 years, maybe more, to shift from that role of the second shooter to the first shooter. If you're doing 40, 45, obviously you're going to move much quicker. From my personal experience, it's all about the grinding, about working ethics. It's about really, really going there and taking your chances, because some of the photographers, some of the second shooters, they would show up and they would be like, "Hey, I have energy. I want to do everything. I want to do 14, 16 hours weddings, I can do them 4 or 5 times a week, and I'm going to do everything. And some photographers would show up and be like, well, I'm not going to do more than 8 hours. I'm going to get tired. My back going to hurt, in their 20s or something like that. So yeah, it's all about your perception, your goals, and where you want to go with it. And I think you got an idea over here. But overall, I would say that the transfer is going to take like about a year and a half. And it's happening very, very naturally. And some of the little questions that you might have right now would disappear while you walk in the walk. So just do whatever what I mentioned, you naturally gonna be there. As a conclusion, I want to say that it's incredibly important to become the very good second shooter before you're gonna become the first shooter. You can get the feel of the event, you can get the feel of the wedding. You will see how the first photographer is working. You naturally going to get their advices. And actually, my suggestion to you is ask your second shooter whether you can carpool to the wedding together. And just naturally, by sitting together when you drive into the wedding, you can ask all sorts of questions. And most of the photographers would happily share their opinions or advices. And most of the time, you would pay for master classes over there, but just driving with that person, you're gonna get so much knowledge that you're not gonna get anywhere. It's very valuable. So use that part as well. In other words, just do it. Just go out there, do it, learn on your own mistakes. There is gonna be one for sure. There is nothing wrong with that. Communicate well. That is the key. I cannot highlight how important it is and how rare it is. And do your job as good as you possibly can at the moment and focus on yourself. On that note, I would wrap up. Thank you so much for watching this video. Make sure you subscribe and like this video, and I'll see you in the next one.